Hey everyone, my name is Josh, and welcome back to your fourth stimulus package and news update. In today's update, we have a lot of news to get into, but first, if you would like to receive 5 free stocks from Webull, valued up to $2,300, make sure to claim them by clicking my link, which you will find in the description box below. Okay, so President Joe Biden finally acknowledged that the Build Back Better bill will miss the Christmas deadline, but still says he's determined to see the bill on the Senate floor as early as possible. In a statement, the president said, "My team and I are having ongoing discussions with Senator Manchin. That work will continue next week. It takes time to finalize these agreements, prepare the legislative changes, and finish all the parliamentary and procedural steps needed to enable a Senate vote. We will advance this work together over the days and weeks ahead. Leader Schumer and I are determined to see the bill successfully on the floor as early as possible." Of course, whether they can ever reach any type of an agreement with Joe Manchin is still very much up in the air. Mostly, the biggest disagreement at this point is over the child tax credit. In Joe Manchin's eyes, he'd like for the child tax credit to be extended for 10 years, just so voters know exactly how much it's likely to cost. At the same time, he's insisting that the entire Build Back Better bill does not cost any more than $1.75 trillion. Now, obviously, if they're going to extend the child tax credit for 10 more years in the bill and keep it below the $1.75 trillion mark, that won't leave too much room for other things, considering that the child tax credit alone would cost over $1 trillion. Yes, to extend the child tax credit payments for 10 more years, that alone would cost over $1 trillion. Because of Manchin's stance on the child tax credit, he's really been getting an earful from other Democrats. When asked about the pressure though, Manchin said, "No one pressures me. I'm from West Virginia."
Tax credit.
They're getting pressure from me?
They're pressuring you to change your position on the child tax
No one
credit.
pressures me. I'm from West Virginia.
Are you going to change your position on that?
I've always been for child.
Yeah, with the way that's in the bill, the 1-year extension.
I've always been for child tax credit. Always will be.
Thank you.
Now, it's being reported that in order for the child tax credit payments to continue being sent out in January, a bill would need to pass by December 28th in order for the IRS to make the monthly payment. However, as House Speaker Pelosi said a couple days ago, she doesn't want the child tax credit to be extended in a separate bill because then they would lose all the leverage in passing the Build Back Better bill. All in all, extending the child tax credit through a separate bill doesn't seem like that realistic of an idea for most lawmakers. Obviously, most Democrats are frustrated by Joe Manchin holding out on the package and now saying he wants the credit extended for 10 more years. Most Democrats were counting on the credit being extended for 1 more year and, in their eyes, thought an agreement had already been reached with Senator Manchin. But no, now they're faced with the reality of, most likely, needing to completely remove the child tax credit in order to fit everything else in the package. That, or it's also entirely possible that the bill dies altogether. Here is Republican Senator Lindsey Graham thanking Manchin for standing his ground on Build Back Better.
And we're going to put a fine point on this week. The good news for the American consumer, there's not going to be any more inflation in your stockings because of Build Back Better. I want to thank Senator Manchin and others for standing their ground. And my belief is that Build Back Better never gets better. It will never get better. You can't make this thing, you can't put lipstick on a pig. And when it comes to inflation and deficit spending, this thing is a monster pig. So let's start with this idea. Our Democratic colleagues say that the CBO score is fake. Senator Durbin, one of my closest friends, he's a good guy. Senator Graham is making up numbers. It's Lindsey at his best. You know, he's waxing loyal followers of Donald Trump, who apparently must be the CBO. And Republicans have some preposterous number to quote on the air. We know what the cost is going to be, and it's nowhere near that. To my good friend Senator Durbin, I promise you I'm not Svengali. Neither one of us have hold over CBO. We didn't make up the numbers. They analyzed the bill, and we'll talk about that later. But I find that the White House spokesperson and Senator Durbin are attacking the CBO because if they can't successfully pull that off, they're in trouble. Here's the problem with their attack on CBO. I feel like I'm on Wheel of Fortune here. Okay. There was another time where there was a different view of the CBO. The estimates from the CBO, which is really, as you know, the gold standard, no Republican or Democrat questions it. President Biden back in 2010. So I want the American people to know that this score from the CBO about the actual cost of the bill is not fake, it's real. The effect on the deficit is not fake, it's real. And so let's go talk about what they've said about this bill in terms of cost. President Biden said, "My Build Back Better agenda costs $0. My plans are fiscally responsible. They're fully paid for. They don't add a single penny to the deficit." CBO said that the deficit will increase by $3 trillion. So when the President, the Vice President, the Treasury Secretary, the Speaker of the House, Senator Bernie Sanders as Chairman of the Budget Committee, and the Chief of Staff to President Biden, Ron Klein, say it is fully paid for, it will not add to the deficit, CBO says that's not true. CBO says it will add $3 trillion to the deficit. Who do you believe, them or CBO? So to my Democratic colleagues, you have been misrepresenting to the American people the real cost of this bill, and CBO scored the bill without gimmicks, and it went from, put it back, 1.75 to almost $5 trillion. It is not paid for. Without gimmicks, it adds $3 trillion to the deficit. So I think Build Back Better is dead, not for just 2021, but forever.
Now, one of the main purposes of passing Build Back Better for Democrats was to make things more affordable. Other than the child tax credit payments that are now in jeopardy, Democrats also wanted to make sure no one paid more than 7% of their income on childcare. However, Republicans say that by the federal government taking control of local childcare, not only will the cost go up, but the quality will actually go down. Here is Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn saying just that.
I think you're getting the idea that we think this is a really bad idea. And as a grandmother of a 15-month-old, I can tell you it is such a bad idea. You know, in Tennessee, it's so interesting. This time of year, we're having church bazaars and Christmas programs and a lot of community events. And every single place I go, I have somebody who says, "Hey, is it really true that the federal government wants to take over child care?" And the reason they're talking about this so much is quite simply, in Tennessee, the primary source of Mother's Day Out programs, of daycare programs, of after-school programs is your local church. And that's where these are taking place. And that is where children are coming during the week. And many times it is a bunch of grandmamas in the community that want to come love on these kids and help take care of these kids and likewise help educate these young moms about how to care for children. And what the federal government would do is would strip these grandmamas of a job that they are doing and they're loving doing. And it would strip these children of caregivers that are there to love and nurture them. That's a real loss, and it has a real cost. Now, what the Democrats are trying to do in their BBB, I call it the Build Back Broke, what they're trying to do is take one vote. And in this one vote, they want to take government control of your children, of education, of your small business, of your bank account. It's their socialist agenda, 24/7, daylight to dark, cradle to grave. That is their goal. But who is going to be most adversely impacted by the bad decision making of the Democratic Party? It is going to be children. It is going to be working parents who are going to be stripped of an opportunity to use child care right there in their local community that is being provided by their neighbors and friends that they trust.
Some other bad news that came in for Democrats yesterday was the Senate parliamentarians ruling on their third plan for immigration reform. In this plan, they would have granted 6.5 million foreign nationals a temporary parole status, which would have given them 5-year work and travel permits. Being that this measure did not meet the standards of the Byrd Rule, though, the parliamentarian ruled that it could not be included in the Build Back Better plan. In a statement released by Democratic leaders, they weren't pleased with the ruling and said, "We strongly disagree with the Senate parliamentarians' interpretation of our immigration proposal, and we will pursue every means to achieve a path to citizenship in the Build Back Better Act. Throughout the entire reconciliation process, we have worked to ensure that immigration reform was not treated as an afterthought. The majority of Americans support our efforts to provide legal status for millions of undocumented immigrants in the United States because it would raise wages, create good-paying jobs, enrich our economy, and improve the lives of all Americans." In some other news, a Florida man, yes, you know how these stories usually go, was kicked off a United Airlines flight for using a thong rather than a mask to protect himself from the new COVID-19 variant. Apparently, a thong had not yet been approved to meet the standards by the CDC against the new variant, despite it covering both his nose and mouth. Airline staff also believed it wasn't appropriate and decided to remove him from the flight.
You're gonna have to come off the airplane. They're not gonna let you travel.
What?
Non-mask compliance.
You can see Jenny's bright red underwear hanging on his face as he gets walked off the plane in the video taken by another passenger. He says he was trying to show why the rule doesn't make sense to him.
There's nothing more absurd than having to wear a mask till I get to cruising altitude so that I can order Tito's by the double and snack on pretzels, and illustrating that absurdity by wearing women's underwear on my face sounds perfect.
Shortly after Jenny left, other passengers started to speak up.
Did he just get kicked off for wearing a mask?
This man then chose to leave the flight as well.
I'm out of here. Forget it. I'm out of here.
Jenny says several passengers ended up getting off the plane to support him.
Thank you to them, because they saw something, an injustice, something that didn't make sense, and they stood up.
Afterwards, Jenny received this email from United Airlines saying he's now banned from United flights until his case has been reviewed by the Passenger Incident Review Committee. Jenny says he still feels like he was in the right.
Your rights end where mine begin, and you don't get to tell me how I conduct myself.
In other news, moving back to the economy, it was reported yesterday that the weekly jobless claims for the period ending on December 11th totaled 206,000. Even though this was an increase from the previous week, continued unemployment claims fell to a pandemic-era low. Because of this, President Biden stated this has been one of the strongest job recoveries in our nation's history. In a statement, the president said, "Today, we received further evidence that our jobs recovery is one of the strongest ever. The average number of Americans filing for unemployment over the last 4 weeks is now at its lowest level since 1969. In other news, with the Fed projecting 3 interest rate hikes in 2022, parts of the stock market absolutely plummeted yesterday as people moved from tech-heavy stocks to more value stocks. Yesterday, the Nasdaq dropped nearly 2.5%, with Apple dropping nearly 4% alone. On the flip side of things, the Dow Jones held about even, with stocks like JP Morgan actually rising by right around 1.5%. Now, the main reason for the Fed deciding to step in and raise rates more aggressively in 2022 is because all of the recent inflation taking place. By raising rates, they hope to cool the rate of inflation. Of course, Republicans argue even with these rate hikes, Democrats would make inflation even worse if they ended up passing the Build Back Better bill. This is also something Joe Manchin warned about, and Republicans say inflation will end up hurting poor families the most. They say the Build Back Better plan would put inflation on steroids.
We're here to talk about the Childcare and pre-K proposal that's in the Build Back Better proposal. A proposal that, at least on the Childcare and pre-K, had no hearings, had no debate, had no consultation with the states, no consultation with providers. And what we'd like to do is lay out for you what the cost is to the American taxpayer. This is a plan that total cost, Democrats say, is $1.75 trillion. CBO's new number scoring the plan as everything extending for the full 10 years, is a number of $4.9 trillion. In the child care and universal pre-K space, the plan suggests that it's $381 billion. The score from CBO, if those plans all exist for 10 years, is $752 billion. And that's making an assumption that 34% of eligible young children live in states that won't participate in the child care piece, and 40% of eligible preschoolers live in states that won't participate in a pre-K plan. So to quote a liberal analyst, and I quote, excluding kids in Texas, Alabama, Tennessee, Florida, and the Carolinas and other similar states from universal pre-K and child care subsidies is an intentional strategy to keep costs down. If the CBO had not factored non-participation in their estimates, then the reported costs for the last 3 years of these programs would have been at least 50% higher. That's over and above the $752 billion that CBO projected. The Progressive People's Policy Project estimates that unsubsidized middle-class families will face inflation cost increasing child care by the tune of $13,000 per year. So take the current child care cost and add $13,000 additional dollars to the cost of child care for one student on an annual basis that's not being subsidized. Democrat plan intentionally shrinks the supply of providers by killing off faith-based providers, small family child care homes, kinship care. So not only do we have a skyrocketing cost of $13,000 in additional cost for child care, we're also reducing the supply of child care that exists in the country. The preschool program grows over time to require a state to invest 37% match, all on state taxpayers. The Democrats end the funding for their child care and pre-K programs in just 6 years. You know, in Washington, we may get away with things like this. Across the country, parents are looking to plan their lives. They need the predictability of child care, and it's impossible to build in when, in fact, you put out a plan that says we're going to subsidize it for 6 years. Listen, we're all realists, and what I've asked my colleagues to do is share with you approaches to bring affordable child care to everybody in America, but also to talk about their experiences in their states, what they're faced with, more importantly, what parents in their state are faced with, because ultimately, whether it's the federal taxpayer or the state taxpayer or the family that pays $13,000 more per child, this is all parents across the country. And they're the ones that are facing the rising cost of inflation today. This is putting it on steroids. With that,
from the inflation report back in November, beef prices were up 20.9% from a year earlier. When the White House has been confronted about all the recent inflation taking place, they blame companies for price gouging. They say these companies could have lower prices, but they're simply taking advantage of the pandemic in order to have bigger profits. So while Republicans argue that damaged supply chains and a labor shortage are to blame for the rise in prices, Democrats say, nope, it's just corporations taking advantage of the pandemic. But on that note, I'm going to go ahead and wrap up this video. Again, if you would like to receive 5 free stocks from Webull, make sure to quickly claim them by clicking my link in the description box below. To receive the first free stock, you will need to fully open an account. Then to receive the 4 other free stocks, which will be valued up to $2,000, you'll need to make a qualifying deposit of at least $1. And even if you aren't all that interested in investing or continuing to invest at this point in time, you can always sell the free stocks you receive and transfer that money, however much those stocks are worth, right back to your bank account. So free stocks or free money is completely up to you. So once again, I do hope that everyone has a great and safe rest of their day. And if you did enjoy the content in today's video and you found it helpful, I would greatly appreciate if you would give this video a like, a big thumbs up. That does just help out with the YouTube algorithm. And until next time, as always, I'll see you in the next video.